Welcome to this presentation on the PowerPack for Advanced Steel from GRAITEC for the What's New for the 2023.1 version. We're going to run through a summarized version of the new features. For the 2023.1 version, we're continuing to add and build upon features previously created within the PowerPack for Advanced Steel. For this version, we are introducing further updates to the camera creator in the form of additional tokens to control camera level, grid references and intersections. These can be used within the description fields. We're also introducing a new tool called the camera browser. This will be an interface designed to allow the user to control all the camera parameters from within the model. We've introduced an update also to the multi-grid and level tool to enable you to add columns to levels. So using standard functionality of Advanced Steel, you'll be able to attach columns to levels determined via that tool. Also, we're bringing a data migration tool to allow you to migrate GRAITEC product data from the PowerPack within Advanced Steel. Also, continuing our development of our stair macros, we've now enabled stringer types for box sections. This works for all the different types of stairs, straight stairs that is, within the PowerPack macros. Combined with that, we also bring a new tread type, a new pan type arrangement that allows for an overlap arrangement, typically used for concrete infill type treads. And associated with that, we have a number of new bearer bar options as well. So we'll go on to discuss these further in the coming slides. Focusing upon the camera creator as our first feature, we introduced this in the 2023 version, and in this .1 version, we've enhanced this feature, bringing new tokens to the description field. So we've added these new token types, which are for grid lines, grid intersection, and camera level. These allow you to place them within the string upon multiple lines, which is also now available within the description field itself. So you have multiple line text entry, and you insert the token at the cursor position, and then that value is populated by data from the model. Also, you'll notice highlighted there is predefined query. This is a set of queries that can be defined in the model using standard functionality of Advanced Steel. This is now populating into the search query to enable the user to select that predefined query. So with these combined together, you can create multiple strings in your description field using token entry that then filters down into what is displayed within the description field of the camera as it's generated. So as previously mentioned, to further complement the camera creator and the grid multi-level tool that we introduced in the 2023 release, we're actually bringing a new tool now, which is called the camera browser. It's a management style interface that's found upon the Manage ribbon tab of the PowerPack. So that's where to look for it if you wish to activate it. So when you activate it, it will bring up a dialog menu which has a series of columns in it, and obviously is populated based upon either the whole model. So it will, if you haven't pre-selected any cameras, it will list every camera that's in the model, whether it's an independent camera on its own or a camera inbuilt to a model view. So a couple of primary features which we think are quite good in this version is that we've added in some drawing style filtering to help you change the style selection and not have to browse through all the different styles. So you can filter by toggling for the user style, so that will change to the user style branch within the drawing style manager itself, and only list those within the drop down. And then there's a second stage filter where you can filter only for GA styles as well. So you won't see all the assembly and part styles when you do that, even if you're in that particular branch. So sort of trying to review the columns as we go across, obviously you can select the camera type, and from the drop down selector you can see the available list of cameras that are within your particular configuration, and you can change those as required. The next element is the description field, which is now available in here as well and can be edited. So if you want to make use of the token enhancements that we also did within the camera creator, you can actually add those elements in. So that's % grid line, % grid intersection, and % camera level. And obviously the drawing style selection is based upon the filtering that you've set previously. And also it will recall the default style that is currently set within the camera. So in the example below, I obviously have an advanced style set, but I'm wanting to browse to the user branch of the style system. Obviously scale is pretty obvious. You see the scale lists available within advanced steel within that drop down dialog, so you can change the scale of the camera itself. There are a number of control parameter fields. Obviously, if you're familiar with cameras, you know that you can alter its size and its X, Y, and Z parameters. So depending on what you want to do or what's already set in the system, you can actually change those parameters within the browser. Obviously, one of the other things to note is that we do have model view cameras, and those you can't actually change the parameters for the size because they're being driven by the model view itself. But you can initiate that you have a camera available within inside that to do the automatic drawing creation, I think is how it's titled within that dialog box. So we've added in that checkbox facility there, and obviously all the other functionality that's above the camera type, description field, etc., can be adjusted within the browser dialog. And obviously to use this, when you've made the changes, you need to apply the changes. They will then apply within the model, and to exit, just the cross arrow at the top or the cancel button, or exit and close the dialog. So one of the enhancements we brought for this version is to do with our multi-grid and level tool that was introduced in the 2023 version. So what we've done in this version is to include the attachment of columns. So this is a standard advanced steel functionality where you can attach columns to levels within the Project Explorer. So the process for doing that is obviously you need to create a multi-level grid and arrangement via the GRAITEC tool, and then using the Project Explorer and changing to work planes, you can then select within that dialog the appropriate levels that you wish the columns to be attached to. So that's the relative work planes. So you obviously do that first, and then you would return to use the create column command from the Autodesk Advanced Steel ribbon, and then place the columns within the model, maybe snapping to a grid point, etc. And you'll find when you do that that the columns are actually spanning vertically between those chosen levels. So obviously as that occurs, you can then check that they're actually attached by using the marking elements of the Project Explorer. And then ultimately you can return to the GRAITEC multi-grid level tool via the contextual menu that we have and adjust the level within that dialog. And when you do that, you can see that obviously the column should lengthen to follow its new level height. So with the attachment of that, you can follow the standard sort of process of advanced steel and work in conjunction with our multi-grid and level tool as well to create your primary structures. So the other new tool that we're bringing for the 2023.1 version is the data migration tool. This is to migrate previous versions of PowerPack data into the current version. The tool is activated via the Windows Start menu. Look under the GRAITEC folder and you should see the icon above. Selecting the icon will initiate the process. If you have the current version of the PowerPack installed, the .1 version that is, and if you haven't already run it inside Advanced Steel by activating a command, particularly for certain elements, this migration process will actually initiate that anyway and populate the required data into the various folders and files of the system. During the process, obviously you'll see some pop-ups appear as well, warning you of certain things. If obviously it doesn't find any data, it will tell you it didn't find anything to migrate from. And then there'll be other pop-ups along the way advising you what to do, where you have a choice as a user to select yes or no. When the main custom settings transfer window appears, the first thing you'll notice is obviously the migration from which previous release. So selecting the drop-down menu, you'll see what's available and what is found on your system. Selecting that will obviously then influence the various fields that you see below. So those buttons, for better term of a word, will be highlighted. The green ones are elements that are available to be transferred. So it also looks at obviously special parts as well, because we're using those within the system. So particularly for stairs and railings macros. When you initiate the transfer as well by selecting from the menu at the bottom, there's a migrate button, or you can manually check each individual element that you want to migrate. So say you don't want to do everything, then it will only migrate what you select. There is options to select all and clear all, and also an option to restore back to the previous version. As you migrate the data, after it's migrated, it will create a log file in a notepad format that you can look at to see what was actually migrated. Also, if you have any errors along the way, it will log those as well and tell you what's going on. Obviously, to exit the dialog, you can close the dialog if you want. That will close the migration process and not complete it. If you do activate it, it will run through to the end and then produce the log file. So this is primarily aimed at obviously GRAITEC data, and by that we mean data that is migrated from joint library entries that are created by GRAITEC tools. This does not replace the standard Autodesk migration process for Advanced Steel and AutoCAD, which is obviously found under the core product. So we're going to move on to the stair elements. Obviously, we still maintain our commitment to improving our stair macros within the PowerPack. So for this version, we've introduced a box section stringer type. So the many user requests for this, and it's sort of been overlooked before, but we've made an effort in this version to include it for what is termed an H-type section profile. So that's a shape code reference internal to Advanced Steel. And it's for all the stair types that are straight origin. So that's 2-flight, 3-flight, single flight with landing, etc. All those configurations that you see available under our stair macros. So as I said, it's hollow section type. Some people term that as box sections. There's several different prefixes for that: SHS, RHS, HSS. Obviously depends on which country you're in. But if you use the H profile in the GUI allowed sections, it should add that in without any problem. So what it'll do is obviously it'll put a box section stringer which can be designated for the internal and external elements. It should perform all the required miter cuts, etc., that are required to obviously link these up together. Obviously, it produces all the other standard stair functionality detailing. So very similar to how a channel would work within the staircase. So it's very, very similar in its operation. There's not a lot of other different changes to that. So I did just mention previously, obviously, the GUI entries. So we have several of those available. We're putting some in by default. The users can obviously add more, and there are various joint controller elements which you can add in. Obviously, the primary one is stringer, and there's additional landing element, landing step mounts, etc. So that is a very nice addition for this 2023.1 version of the stair macro, and we'll go on to talk about the other elements we're adding into stairs in the next slide. So moving on, we're going to continue to talk about stairs, and for this version we've built a new pan type tread. So this is specifically designed to work for concrete infill types, and it gives an overlap arrangement, sort of interlock between the two treads and also into the landings as well. So you can see how this is working if we look at some of the actual fold features. So if we look at RF1 over on the right there, you can see that's sort of inside the nosing point of the stair tread itself. And then if we go to RF2, that is actually what we've termed the lip fold, which actually provides the overlock at that nosing point. So some people like to have a return lip edge for their concrete to go up against. Similarly, obviously you can control the riser element of the stair. So that's the incline element towards the heel rear element of the stair configuration. So also with that, there's a couple of other additional features that we've introduced as well, is that there was an option at the nosing point, which is DP1, to actually make that vertical. And also you'll see an optional indent feature, which is controlled by the offset dimension SP1 and produces a crease fold at the rear of the tread. Sometimes that is introduced in countries to form a sort of lock mechanism for the concrete infill being placed within the stair arrangement. To complement that, also within this version, we needed to look at some new connections to the stringer face. And although we had connections for angles and flat bars, etc., well, they didn't really cover what we needed. So we have extended that, and we've created new flat and square bar types and also plate types. And these are actually introducing two elements, one along the base of the pan of the tread and one along the rear incline face of the riser element of the tread. So they provide direct support, and then obviously the tread is welded to that. The second option is obviously to do with angle. Some people are still using angles to do this and perform this task, so we've obviously introduced those in the same configuration across the base of the pan and the rear of the incline riser. The final type that we did is a folded plate or folded flat section profile, and this is formed to make the connection on the underside of the tread, again to the base and the rear of the riser element, and it's formed out of a folded plate. There's a couple of other sub options in there as well to put a second bend into it. So obviously all this sort of leads into the fact that we do need to then look at the landings and the integration for the landings. So no small task that, because then all the features that we added above, we then had to go back and look at our landings and integrate those features within the landing elements as well. So if you look within the macro when you get a chance to use it, you'll see these elements added in, and there's various configurations and checkboxes which are similar to what the tread is as well. So you should be able to follow that quite easily, and we'll probably cover that in some online training videos after the initial release of the software. That concludes this presentation on the What's New for the PowerPack for Advanced Steel for 2023.1. Thank you very much for watching.